Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be in the world and whatever time it is. Um, this is Ashim Kumar again, and continuing our series of the Legacy Family Business. Really excited about our little chat today with Chris Yount. Chris is. I'm so happy that Chris has taken the time to join us because he personifies the theme of this series of recordings because he's actually been through the process of succession where he took over as a member of the third generation, uh, his family business, and then managed to turn it around through a number of challenges, and I'll let him tell you more about that, and then actually stepped away through a sale. So he's now advising, and as you might expect, his area of particular expertise, is turnaround and as an angel investor and board advisor. So, without further ado, I'd love to introduce Chris Yount, and can't wait to hear what he says. So, welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Ashim. Thank you so much for having me. This will be
My
fun.
absolute pleasure. I'm so delighted you managed to get away long enough to join us. Um, I'll start with the same question I start with pretty much everybody, and that is, could you tell us a little bit about what brought you to where you are today, your story, if you like?
Sure. So on the family business side, I was a member of a third generation family business that my grandfather founded in 1939. So I started working in the business in 2004. We had a rule within our family business that you weren't allowed to join without at least 3 years of outside experience as a family member. And so I had my own small career for about 4.5 5 years before I joined the family business. But when I joined, started working my way up through the ranks, building areas of the company that were not previously that robust, like our marketing department, product management, and some of the sales roles. And then 2008, at that point, my father was semi-retired and a board member, and we had a non-family member who was running the day-to-day operations. And the housing crisis struck. Our business was manufacturing waterproofing products that went into home construction, primarily domestically in the US. And 80% of our addressable market disappeared pretty much overnight, which was obviously difficult on the business. We had just completed an acquisition, a very major acquisition for us of a bankrupt competitor. So we took on a bunch of debt and then found ourselves with 80% fewer customers. And that was the point where I took over the family business and ran it for the next bit over a decade.
Okay, thank you. So, gosh, so many questions arose as you were speaking,
Yeah.
Chris. So let me start with the first one. You said it was it was a requirement that everybody that joined the family business had a minimum of 3 years experience. I presume you mean outside the business.
Outside of the company, yeah. So this was put in by my father. I was the only generation who was the beneficiary of this policy. It was our official policy, but no other generations had to gone through it. So the purpose of it was to try to break that nepotism chain to a degree and force each upcoming family member to go out and explore on their own for a little bit. And there's a lot of benefits to that type of system that I really enjoyed being put through that process. It forces you to really think about what your passions are in life rather than, so many, the day they get their diploma off their university stage, walk down from the podium and walk right into their job in the family business. And they're never given a choice or chance to explore anything else.
Right.
It helps build some self-confidence in that upcoming family member, in that I received promotions and raises and made achievements in my short outside career that were not related to my last name and not related to my dad giving them to me. So there was some finding your own 2 feet underneath you aspect to it. And then lastly, I think the other piece of it that's quite important is when I did come to the business and I did start working in the business full time, I brought with me at least a modicum of a resume and something to somewhat alleviate the concerns that employees always have about the next young kid coming into the business with that family name of, is this person worthwhile at all? Am I going to be reporting to a trust fund kid who has no work ethic, who has no talent, who has no abilities? So I think it's good for both the individual and for the business to try to create that fire brick between your education and joining the family business, and I benefited greatly from it.
Brilliant. I mean, I perfectly see that. I mean, that's certainly been my experience. The other thing I guess that process does is it makes it easier for non-family members to accept you, because if you like, you've earned your stripes, you've earned your right to be there, and therefore you come in with authority that is outside your name. Yes, you've done something, you've achieved something, and you've shown that you can create success, and therefore you deserve a seat at the table, if I can put it like that.
Yeah. I think one other benefit that I saw is, if you come into a job that's been done, in our case, it had been 70 years of history in the business. And you walk up and you stand next to your father and you say, what do I do? And we always pulled the lever this way. This is exactly what we do. And that's all you ever learn. Guess what I'll teach my children?
Right.
This is what we do. We pull the lever this way. This is what we do.
Right.
But by having other experiences in other areas, you learn other techniques, other formats, other organizational strategies, other computer systems, and modernizing your company, because family businesses can be quite slow to modernize. Usually, we're very slow-moving, traditional people, usually in our culture, in our DNA. And so by bringing outside ideas from other organizations, when somebody says, you pull the lever this way, I say, I did see once that you can automate that lever. Oh,
Right.
Really? How did that work? And
Yeah.
you can bring some new lifeblood into the business. And I think there's a value there as well.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. This is one of the challenges in shifting culture between generations in family businesses, isn't there?
Yes.
And how do you get to do things differently, and is there another way of doing it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the other thing that you mentioned earlier, which was of interest, you say that your father had appointed a non-family member to run the company. What was the thinking behind that, and how did that work?
He had semi-retired and was just chairman of our board, but was not operational in the day-to-day at that point in his career. And so this was a gentleman who had been with the company a long time, had run one of our manufacturing plants, was a long-term member of the business, and did an excellent job as we continued to climb in the preceding period, say 2000 to 2008, or even really not the late 90s to 2008. The U.S. housing market was just on a tear, and it was high times. We were sold out every year. We could raise our prices at will, just making money hand over fist. But when we hit this crisis period, what we were seeing in our leadership from this non-family member was an analysis paralysis, which happens a lot in crisis, and I see quite a bit right now in COVID-19 times, as far as dealing with a real existential crisis to the business. Is the decisions you have to make are so horrible that there's a safety in feeling that you've really broken out your Excel spreadsheet and thought of every angle and every piece and every number. And the situation is changing so quickly that by the time you finish that analysis, all the assumptions that started that Excel sheet are now worthless.
Right.
And so you start over and you get in this doom loop of analysis without action. And that's where we found ourselves as a business. So myself and the CFO, I was on a very slow path towards the presidency of the company, working my way through other departments, as I had said, with no defined plan anytime soon for me to take over the company. I was just about to turn 30, I believe. Yeah, I just turned 30, I believe.
Right.
So still young in the business and that type of thing. But me and the CFO were talking a lot and saying, geez, as much as we were counseling the president, we did not feel like we were moving fast enough. We were not making the decisions that needed to be made, and really agreed that a change in leadership was needed. And so we sat down with my father, who, like I said, was non-operating, but was the person the president reports to as chairman, and said, look, this needs to change. And as we discussed it, really one of the last people of the leadership team that was going to be left, of the few that were going to be left to run the business, was going to be myself. I really wanted the CFO to take over. He's very humble and an amazing gentleman, who said he would do it as an interim for 6 months as sort of training wheels to help me get up and running, but was just the type of person who did not want that top spot.
Right.
And so we formulated a plan with my father of, okay, this is how we'll do it. We'll have the CFO help. We'll be co-presidents for the first 6 months, and then he'll step back to the CFO role, and I'll take over with the vision that I had for a turnaround, supported with other members of the leadership team. So we dismissed that non-family member who was running it, and I took over at that point.
Understood.
Yeah.
So this was 2008, is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
2008. So in 2008, there you are, you're 29 years old, let's say 30 by now, and you are basically being eased into the top spot. You've had 4 years of experience outside the business.
Yes.
How did that feel? Was
scary?
Yeah.
It was very scary.
I should imagine it was.
It was particular. There was both, like all things in life have a pro and a con to them.
Right.
And the con was, this was a very scary time. We were very, very close to bankruptcy, really on the courthouse steps of bankruptcy, because the bank was pulling all its lines of credit from us and putting us on very restrictive covenants with added fees and everything else. It was, we were a drowning man who's being thrown bowling balls to hang on to. It was just a very tough period. So that's the con. Here's the pro, though, if you have to find the bright side in life, is there's a lot of pressure on every generation when you take over a family business, especially my whole life. I mean, as far as I can remember, I have always heard the phrase, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. And there are versions of this idiom in many languages that generally a first generation builds wealth, a second generation or creates it, a second generation builds it, and a third generation will destroy it. And I've been told this, lovingly, since I could walk, that you will be the one who will wreck this. And so having that pressure your whole life, and just the pressure of living up to your father and your grandfather, was a lot of pressure. The pro was, I took it over so close to bankruptcy and so close to the end. Some of that pressure, I was able to push that aside, that then internalized pressure, in that if I crashed this thing and it failed and we did go bankrupt and destroy the company, nobody would have blamed me. Everybody said, it's kind of an unwinnable situation anyways.
Right.
So there was a relief, a very small relief in the middle of this hailstorm, of taking that pressure away and feeling like, okay, let me just swing as hard as I can and do as best as I can. And if it works out, then I get to have the hero's journey. And if it doesn't work out, well, you were handed a sinking ship. What could you do?
Right.
So that, if I'm to look on the bright side of my emotional state through that time period, that's the bright side, as little of it as there is.
Right. See, because I suspect that many potential successors who are watching this, who are listening to this, may also be a little apprehensive about taking the reins at a relatively young age and so on. And I think hearing your experience is probably very valuable to them. I suspect it'll make them feel, well, I'm not alone, other people have felt it. So there you are, you've taken over the reins. What did you do right? What did you make sure happened so that you didn't go from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves? Exciting story.
Yeah. The thing I'm most proud of, it certainly is a team effort. We had a great team. We have amazing culture, and wonderful people who worked really hard. And so any leader who takes sole credit for anything is lying, generally speaking. So, but the one piece that I will take credit for, which is what a leader should do, which is finding the direction of the company. Like I said, we had been in this cycle pretty much for a year, because we saw the downturn coming about October of 2006. We were very clear that it was coming, because we had some early indicators into the US housing economy that were very apparent to us by then. We didn't know how bad it was going to get, but we knew something bad was coming. And so most of 2007 was plan 1 month, analyze the second month, third month when we're about to act, everything was wrong, start over. And we did that basically for all of 2007. We just watched as our business fell apart. So in 2008, when I took over, I took the executives that were left on the team. We had been doing some layoffs. We had been doing some of that, but nothing really major yet. And I said, okay, we went to a hotel conference room. So we were offsite, away from any of the manufacturing plants that had these fiefdoms that didn't want to be shut down and protected, away from headquarters, everything. And we got that group in the room and I said, okay, we're doing the whiteboard. I got a big whiteboard. I said, this is our sales number for 2009, which was way below what 2008 was looking to be. And I said, that won't ever be, that's too low. I said, it's fine. This is what I'm saying the number is. And this is what our margin will be, which is way lower than we were at that point. And they said, oh, it's too low, it's too low. So it's fine, but that's what we're going to use. That's what's going to be on the board. This times this percentage equals this many dollars. If we can break even in 2009 at the bottom, at the worst of the worst, then we have a business that can live and grow. And so that's our goal, is to no longer be losing money, because we're hemorrhaging money at this point. So we are going to build a blank company that is going to make this dollar number. And that company, we're going to build an org chart that can be that company, totally new. We're not based on anything we have today. And that org chart will not have as many names as are in this room. The room was about 9 people. And we're going to just put a position and a salary, a bare minimum salary that we can pay that position, as well as all the other aspects of the company. We're going to build this blank company up today. And at the very end of the day, we'll put some names next to those slots in the org chart. And some of your names in this room will be on that org chart, and some of your names will not be. And what I can tell you, because we have this family business, we have this ethos and this culture and this trust, is I will do my best to take care of you, as we have always, and give you the parting package that you deserve that is respectful of your time. But I ask for you to have maturity and professionalism and help me build this blank company. And to a man, to their credit, wonderful team, we did. We sat down and we built this blank company up. And at the end of the day, we hung the names where the names would be. And you looked around and there was 5 of the 9 people in the room aren't on the board. And so we had to go have those conversations about ways to respectfully help them move on in different ways. Some were exit packages, some were consulting contracts where we could use some of their services, et cetera. And that became our guiding light. This was the document that guided how we would start to operate, which meant different plants had to be closed, other rounds of layoffs, et cetera. But being lucky or good, that the sales number that everybody said was unrealistic turned out to be exactly the sales number in 2009, within hundreds of dollars. And the profit number happened to be exactly right. Again, lucky or good, I don't know, but we happened to nail it. And we happened to do exactly what we said. We broke even in 2009. And building off of that base, we were a rocket ship. We were prepared for any monicum of a real economy again. We were ready to go. And so that's the part I'm the most proud of, is what we affectionately became the whiteboard exercise that we would refer to in the company of starting with a blank sheet of paper. We're not analyzing, breaking down from where we are. We're going to build up from where we are.
Sure. That fascinating story. I mean, really, so many lessons, I think, there for everyone. I mean, what struck me as you were speaking was, the key elements of that process were honesty, transparency, direction, clarity, and all of those are key in any organization. But I would suspect that, I know that with family businesses, especially because there are even more moving parts, it's important on a consistent basis to make sure that everybody is moving the same direction. Everyone knows where we're going as a business and as a family. And that's, that requires things that I've just mentioned, the clarity, etc. So great example. And thank you for that. And I guess that also enhance the kind of the trust they had in you,
Mhm.
in that they knew they could trust you. I mean, they knew they could rely on you, that you would give it to them straight, and I
Yeah.
guess that made life easier running the business.
Yeah, one thing I had to work on quite a bit that was a great lesson for managing through any crisis is there is always the tendency to want to sugarcoat the truth. There's
Right.
always the tendency to want to, I'm protecting my people. And you just don't have that luxury. You don't have that time. So one thing we did that's a great example of it, that's sort of a corollary to the story I just told, is we were finding, as much as we were doing terrible things, we're laying people off, we're closing factories, we're suspending 401k match and a bunch of things that you don't want to do, but we had to do to survive, and trying to explain them as clearly as we could.
Right.
No matter what we did, the rumor mill always had a worse version that they were talking about. You'd have people come in, oh my gosh, you're going to make us work 90 hours a week. You're going to start harvesting our organs and selling us to enslavement camps, or Lord knows, they were just crazy
Sure,
stories.
sure, been there.
And I got tired of shooting down one-on-one individual conversations of, I heard this. No, of course we're not doing that, whatever. So we decided, we implemented a thing that was called the all hands meeting. So every quarter, at the end of the quarter, we had everybody get into a room or on video conference or whatever it took to be sitting in front of me. Nobody, no filters, no intermediaries. The man responsible for everything is right in front of you, and you can ask any question you want. And we created radical transparency. So we had never, being a privately owned, we were entirely owned by my family, never shared broadly across the company financials. And so I said, we don't have time for this. We have to show everybody exactly where we're at. So the rumor mill version of how many millions of dollars we were making or losing or whatever, we could clarify it. So it was very simplified. We had a manufacturing environment. We had people who, don't have MBAs and those types of things to get deep into the financials, but a very high level. This is how much we made. This is how much we made last year. This is how much we budgeted for. This is why we missed it or why we exceeded it. I kind of gave my State of the Union and opened it up to questions and addressed rumors all at once, and just created very radical transparency up to what we're doing. And like I said, you could not sugarcoat it. So if people would say, "Are we having any more layoffs?" You always want to say no, but I would have to say, I don't know that yet. As soon as we know, we will tell you.
Right.
But here's why I don't know it. See, when we just looked at the numbers, this number is getting better, but this number is not yet. So could we? We might. Let's be clear that everybody who's been laid off, we've taken care of. We've given them a severance package. We've tried to transition them to, resume services and other companies and whatever we could do. But I would love to say no.
Yeah,
I can't.
Yeah.
This is where we're at. So that process also radically transformed the culture, and imbibed me with power on the culture, as far as people saying, okay, well, he is giving it to us straight, because in these conversations, he's saying things that are not things you want to say. And you needed to do that to build that level of trust. And it was a practice we continued even once we, after 2 or 3 years, we were in very solid financial footing, growing very rapidly, doing well, moving on to some of the best years the company had in its 80-year history. But we kept that practice in place. And the conversation changed, the questions changed.
Sure.
So once we were no longer in crisis, it started to be, hey, we had a record quarter. When do I get a raise? Good question. And sometimes the answers are easy. You're right, you deserve a raise and we're giving raises. Or sometimes the answers are hard. Here's a salary survey in the area for these types of jobs. Labor is a commodity to a degree. And so you are in the 75th percentile of forklift drivers in this area. We're not giving raises because this is what forklift drivers get paid. And, that's, it's a commodity, much like oil and plastics and every other thing that went into the business that we're buying. And so we have to pay market rates, but these are the market rates. And so we're taking those, you're looking at this margin, this added profitability. What are you doing with it? Well, I'm not just lining my pockets. We're buying this machine. We're adding this automation. We're making these investments and helping them understand the direction. So once everybody understands the direction, we can all pull on the rope in the same direction.
Absolutely. Wonderful. I could sit here and talk to you for hours about this process. It's fascinating. I mean, I love the whole change thing and the engagement that it brings from all
Mhm.
parties. But I'd love us to move on now. So here you are.
Sure.
You kind of the company's been through a dip. The market's
Yeah.
pulling up. The company's pulling up. You're lean, mean, and you're ready to take advantage of the improvements in the market. And then something happens which takes you to the decision of, well, I'm going to step down now.
Mhm.
What was the thing that happened?
Yeah. So it was not a traditional path in that. Pretty much, if you take it roughly as a decade that I ran the business, the first 3 years were crisis management, or the first third was just get us out of the hole. The next 3 years were organic growth. We were, adding new products and doing kind of standard organic growth processes. And then the final 3 years, we were running out of organic growth. We were, plateau, not going up at that same pace.
Right.
And so we started to look for acquisitions. And so we were out looking at companies to bolt on, to expand into new markets, to new products, et cetera. Standard reasons why you go through acquisition
Mm-hmm.
hunts. As we did that, one of our largest suppliers, who was owned by a private equity group, and like most that are owned by private equity groups, are very much out on the hunt for acquisitions. I was speaking with the CEO of this company, and he was said we had kind of put them into a bad strategic corner, where some aspects of the relationship were falling apart, and we're going to be very bad for them and very good for us. And he said, we really need to change this. And I said, well, based on your performance and our contracts and a variety of factors, this is what's best for my company, which my job is to do what's best for my company. And
Sure.
I'm sorry, but as painful as this will be for your business, this is how we are proceeding. And he said, okay, well, we just need to buy you. And I said, well, we've last 3 years, they've all been record profit, record growth. We've never done so well in our 80-year history. And, the job gets a lot easier when it's not the crisis management mode. And I'm enjoying it quite a bit. We're not for sale. And he said, it's valuable enough to us that we'll just keep increasing the offer price until you say yes. So I didn't come to it purposefully as far as putting the company on the market and trying to sell it and do that. We found ourselves in a position where the offer was significant enough that it changed my mindset about owning the company. So that's how I got there. There's a little bit of background. So your question was, how did I think through the process of selling a family business and letting go of that legacy? Mm-hmm. I think the one thing I had that was advantageous, that not a lot of family businesses have, is the picture that the business is not immortal and that the business will not continue indefinitely. So up until that point, every minute of every day of my life, the business existed. And every minute of every day of my father's life, the business existed. My grandfather had passed away. So nobody in living memory of my family ever knew a time where this business didn't exist. So it's very easy to fool yourself into the thought that this is a perpetual motion machine that will continue on forever. I had the advantage of seeing how close to the brink of the end of this business we were in 2008. So I was very cognizant of the risks of having the vast majority of your wealth in one place.
Right.
And how devastating that would have been for our family as a whole. So what that helped me do, and we're investors. So if somebody offers you more than something is worth as an investor, you should consider it. And this company was offering more to us than we thought the business was worth, and we thought it was reasonably worth to us. Their valuation of it made different sense for different equations. So in getting more than the business was worth, I was able to look at, instead of being the protector of the family business, I thought of my role as being the protector of the family. And so I could do a better job of that by taking the proceeds of that sale and investing them in a broader category of investments, both stocks, bonds, real estate, et cetera, and be able to return a similar amount of money to the family, a similar level of wealth and protection and safety, but at a much lower risk asset class. So
Right.
so that's what I'm able to do now. We work with advisors and investment professionals to take the proceeds and turn them into a generation of wealth for the family. But when housing starts fall off a map again, which they do, they're cyclical.
Sure.
We won't be sweating it as much. Now, when the stock market falls, as March of 2020 was a very heart-wrenching period for people who make their money off of investments. But by the end of 2020, the average investment had made 18%
Right.
in the marketplace. So a lot better than most people who were trying to operate a manufacturing facility with masks and COVID distance testing and the added costs, labor, and efforts of running a business. So that's sort of the way I thought of it. Is this offered me the opportunity to take care of the family in a different way, and not being wed to the idea that I'm here to take care of the family business. I'm here to take care of the family, and that's a mindset shift.
Absolutely. And again, it's one of those things that very often families find difficult to do, which is to distinguish between the two, the family and the business. So in some ways, there's many ways, there's a big overlap. But at the end of
Mhm,
the day, it needs to be seen as a business.
mhm,
And the decisions made have to be based on predominantly business concerns. So
mhm.
so here's the next question that comes to mind. Then, I don't know if your father was alive at the time when you made this decision.
He was. He was still
What was his
non-operational.
response? What was
Um,
his response to this?
he had a very mature response to it, which I really admire. So he was still in the role of chairman of the board. We had a board of directors, but not operational, not involved in any day to day. He really had seen it as the business had been successfully handed on to me. And he was almost 70, really close to 70 at the time, and said, you know, I have a great lifestyle. He lives in a wonderful house, drives whatever car he wants, gets to travel. And this sale will not change my lifestyle. I have as much money as I want to do the things I want to do. So he had no interest in it from that standpoint. He said, I also don't have to live with it as long as you do. my general life expectancy is considerably shorter. And
Right.
so you're the one who has to, I was 40 at the time. You're the one who has a good 40, 50 years of living with the pride and or regrets of doing this. So you really have to make the decision on how you feel about it. So he was a wonderful guide, but also wonderfully hands-off in saying, you're the one who should make this decision. He really recognized he shouldn't be the one to make the decision.
Right.
And so he was an incredibly valuable sounding board, but was very much able to separate his emotions from the decision and just offer counsel.
Wonderful.
So
Oh, well,
very unique.
that's great. Yeah, absolutely. Again, one of those tensions that often arises,
Mm-hmm.
um, where one generation wants to sell it and an earlier one doesn't. And one of the things that has to be clear right from the start is, I mean, these conversations have to be taking place all the time. That
Mm-hmm.
selling is an option, and so on. So,
Mm-hmm.
what about other members of the family? Were they all okay with this decision of yours? Or?
Yeah, so we didn't. Every generation there was an older girl and a younger boy, and the older girl
Okay.
had no interest in the business, and the younger boy took over. So we really went father to son as far as the management of the business, and um, and so the other family members it was discussed with, but they were not a key part of the decision making
Okay.
apparatus. But in that they weren't a part of it, we all approach it the same way. And I use this phrase from the day that I signed the paperwork and continue to use it all the time. That from a head standpoint, this was the best decision I've ever made in my life. From a
Right.
heart standpoint, it's something I will think about every day for the rest of my life. It's the emotional piece is never going to go away. There is a lot of emotion in what was built by your father and your grandfather, and that I put, an incredible amount of my life into as well. And that my children are not going to have the opportunity to be a part of that. There's an emotional piece of that you have to
Of
balance
course there
out.
is.
And so I think we all agreed on that framework and that concept of emotionally this is tough, but we shouldn't allow the emotions to stand in the way of what is probably the smarter decision to make.
Right, right, absolutely. Yes, again, separating the business from the family. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there is an emotional component to it, and but there you are. You have some wonderful memories of that process, and you did
Hmm.
well. You did well by your father and your grandfather, if we speak
Hmm.
from a business perspective. So
Sure.
sounds great. So
Yeah.
congratulations on that. And so
Thank you.
okay, so now we've seen you both as a successor and an owner who has exited. So we've seen both
Hmm.
sides of that. Um, if somebody found themselves in the position you were in, either as successor or as someone who's exited, what would be the three, if you like, most valuable pieces of advice you might give them? What to
Hmm.
bear in mind?
They're really wildly different worlds, being a successor versus being somebody who's exited. So being a successor, communication between the generations, assuming that there's multiple generations involved at the same time, is really critical. Work maintaining that relationship first and foremost is important. So my father and I could have these conversations because of the legacy of good communication we had had, and our ability to debate and discuss. And we did not always agree on decisions about the business. Certainly it was not always a fairy tale, but we had respect for one another, respect for each other's intellect and decision making and viewpoint, and the communication tools to have in-depth discussions about each of those perspectives and come to places in there. So as a successor, communication with those other generations would be by far the best tip I would have, because you have to manage this business, which is difficult, and you have to still have Christmas dinner with with these other members of the company. You don't have to do that with your secretary or the janitor. You do have to do that with your parents and cousins and siblings and all these other members who can come into a family business. So protecting and finding ways to separate the personal and professional is critical as a
Right.
successor. As far as somebody exiting goes, there is a lot of calculus that goes into that decision. That's usually the thing that the people I work with now have the most questions about is separating that head and heart piece of, the emotions are difficult and how do I think about it. So you really have to be able to get introspective for a while, which includes talking to other members of the family, but go through the calculus of all the factors involved. How much of your personal identity and ego is involved in running this business, which is a key factor in
Sure.
personal satisfaction. Where's the next gen at? Are they all 5? Are they 25? If they're 25, how interested are they? How capable are they? Which is certainly always a question. What do you see the odds of them coming in? What's going on in your industry specifically? We were in an industry that was very much attracting attention of Fortune 500 competitors, and our Fortune 500 competitors were getting more and more aggressive about their positioning
Right.
in the business. It was another factor as far as, okay, as a mid-sized firm in this space, how long can we continue to buffet the advances of people with essentially unlimited money and budgets? It's a difficult position to be in. Doesn't mean it was insurmountable. I believed in our team, and we'd shown a great track record of growth and resilience. But what are those risk factors? How do they play? So you got to go through the calculus of each of these
Sure.
pieces, including your own personal age. I was doing this at 40. 40 is a generally pretty early time to retire for your life. So, I had to think a lot about what's the plan for the next stages of my life and what brings me personal happiness. As you move up Maslow's hierarchy, we have shelter covered and we have food covered. And now you're moving up to personal satisfaction and fulfillment and meaning and a lot of esoteric things that not a lot of people have as much time to battle their way through, but are interesting questions nonetheless. So I would spend a lot of time in being introspective for the folks on the looking to sell side. Be introspective about that calculus. Really go through each of the factors. Spend time with your spouse and your other members of your family. How does their calculus look that's different from yours, and really think through how you may navigate those waters and what might bring you the most happiness overall.
Wonderful explanation, Chris. Thank you. I mean, so again, it reinforces, what is very clear to me, that it's not purely a a quantitative decision. It has to be a combination of quantitative, qualitative, emotional decision, which has, again, it brings into play family members and other stakeholders into the conversation to have a balanced outcome. And one of the things I'm sure you've seen as well in your role as advisor is when those things don't come together, there is the risk of a drop in the value of the business, such that when the exit does happen, it's for a fraction of what it was actually worth before that process was done, or done badly.
Yeah.
Say,
the emotions are the factor that's different, that's part of family business than any other business. So
right.
Senior vice president of a division of GE doesn't think emotionally about selling that division. They've got an army of MBAs with Excel spreadsheets that go through the calculus and get the whole thing put together, and they go, yeah, this is a good deal for the company as a whole. Off we go. Even if it means me not having a job, I now have this wonderful bright mark on my resume, and I can go be a senior vice president at Amazon and move on to another large industrial company, what have you. They don't have that emotional component. So that's the X factor that a family business experiences is. I always told those who approach us, we were approached all the time by people looking to purchase us. And I always said, you have to value the business in your standard way with your Excel spreadsheets. But you also are going to have to value 3 invisible lines that we keep on our balance sheet that you can't read. It's the blood, sweat, and tears of my grandfather, the blood, sweat, and tears of my father, and my blood, sweat, and tears.
Right.
And you won't see them anywhere in the income statement or balance sheet, but they're there.
Of
and
course
we have a value to those, and you would need to pay for them. And so that is a different way of thinking that, the private equity groups take some time to get their heads around that concept because they don't approach it that way, which is fine.
Right.
That's not what they're paid to do.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, fascinating. Thank you so much for that explanation. But now, unfortunately, I'm conscious of time, and we're going to wrap up. But before we go, I understand, Chris, that you have a free gift to share with our audience, and I want to share that with us now, please.
Yeah. So in my semi-retirement, my profession now is I've been a board advisor for a number of businesses, and I was trying to find that work-life balance. I've termed it the designed life of I enjoy business, I enjoy family business, especially I have a huge passion for family-based businesses, and sharing my insights and experiences and guidance is what my passion is now. And so I've been board advising for a number of companies and still looking for a couple others. But my gift to your audience is anybody who's listened to this interview who wants to call me up at least for a 1-hour conversation, I would be happy to have with anybody who's listened to this. If I'm a fit for a longer term help for their business, I would love to talk to them about that. And if not, happy to share even more in-depth drill downs on some of the aspects of our conversation. So the best way to reach me is my personal website, which is ChristopherYount.com, ChristopherYount.com. So you can find ways to contact me there. I also write articles for Family Business Magazine and Forbes. You can find links to all the articles I've been writing for them in my retirement to get a better sense of my thinking or a very specific thoughts on aspects of family business that may be helpful. But I suggest people check that out. And if they want to take me up on having an hour-long conversation, I would be happy to do that with any of your listeners.
Magnificent gift, Chris. So much value to share, and I'm sure there'll be knocking your doors down, trying to, Chris, give us an hour here. So thank you again for joining us, Chris. A real pleasure. And I hope that we get an opportunity to speak again in the not too distant future. Bye for now.
Yeah. Thank you, Ashim.
Thanks. Bye.